You are the only animal on Earth that cooks its food. Out of the millions of species alive today, not a single other one takes what it is about to eat and deliberately holds it over fire. Not one. And here's the part that should genuinely stop you cold. That one strange habit, cooking, may be the entire reason you have a brain big enough to even wonder about it. We treat cooking like a lifestyle, a hobby, a thing on television. But the real reason our ancestors first started cooking has almost nothing to do with taste, and almost everything to do with survival, energy, and the birth of the human mind itself. Because when our ancestors first pushed food into a fire, they were not just changing dinner. They were changing what a human being is. To understand why, you have to start with a problem. A raw problem. Look at our closest living relatives, the chimpanzees. A chimp spends around 6 hours of every single day doing nothing but chewing. Not finding food, not fighting, just chewing. Raw food is tough, fibrous, and stubborn. It fights back. Your body has to burn a huge amount of energy just to break it down, and even after all that effort, it surrenders only a fraction of the calories locked inside it. For most animals on this planet, being alive is an exhausting, nonstop race to shove enough raw material into your mouth to avoid starving. Gorillas are even worse off, chewing for most of their waking lives. And for millions of years, our own ancestors were trapped in that exact same race. They were just clever apes chewing away the daylight. And then something happened that broke the race wide open. Here's the thing almost nobody realizes about their own body. Your brain is a monster. It makes up only about 2% of your body weight, but it devours roughly 20% of your total energy every hour of every day, even while you are fast asleep. Pound for pound, it is by far the most expensive organ you own. And that creates a brutal piece of evolutionary math. To grow a bigger brain, you need far more fuel. But gathering, chewing, and digesting enough raw food to power a big brain would take more hours than a day actually contains. It is simply not possible. In 1995, two scientists named Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler turned this into an idea they called the expensive tissue hypothesis. They noticed that as the human brain ballooned in size over millions of years, our guts quietly shrank. And that is not a coincidence. Both the brain and the digestive system are enormously costly to run, and no body can afford to have both of them huge at the same time. Something had to give. The only way to shrink the gut while growing the brain was to start eating food that was already easy to digest, food that had, in a sense, been partly broken down before it ever touched your tongue. And that is precisely what cooking does. The scientist who turned this into a bold and famous claim is a Harvard primatologist named Richard Wrangham. In his 2009 book, Catching Fire, he argued something that sounded almost too big to be true, that cooking did not merely help early humans. Cooking created them. When you apply heat to food, it does the hard work your stomach would otherwise have to do. It breaks apart tough fibers, unravels proteins, and bursts open starches, releasing calories that a raw version would have kept locked away forever. A cooked meal hands your body far more usable energy in return for far less effort. Wrangham's argument was that this sudden, reliable flood of extra energy is what finally allowed our ancestors to afford a larger, hungrier, more powerful brain. And a neuroscientist named Susanna Herculano Hausel pushed the idea even further. She carefully counted the neurons packed inside different primate brains, and she found something striking. A great ape living on raw food simply cannot eat for enough hours in the day to fuel a brain like ours. She calculated that to power the human brain on a raw diet alone, you would have to spend more than 9 hours a day, every day, doing nothing but eating. It cannot be done. A raw food ape is capped permanently by the clock, and cooking is the thing that removed the cap. It let us build a brain crackling with 86 billion neurons, and then, just as importantly, it gave us the spare hours to actually go out and use it. But if cooking really is this powerful, it should have left its fingerprints all over your body. And it has. You are carrying the evidence around with you at this very moment. Look at your own mouth. Compared to every other ape, your teeth are almost comically small. Your jaw is weak. The muscles you chew with are feeble. Your entire digestive tract is short and simple. Every single one of those features is the signature of an animal that gave up eating raw, tough food a very, very long time ago. And we have leaned on cooking so completely that we can no longer live properly without it. When modern people try to survive entirely on raw food, studies have repeatedly found that they tend to lose weight they cannot afford to lose, and that a large number of women simply stop being able to conceive children. Sit with how bizarre that truly is. We are the only creature on this entire planet that has become biologically dependent on cooking its own meals. Every other animal alive could go back to eating everything raw tomorrow morning and be perfectly fine. We could not. For us, cooking stopped being a choice a long time ago. It became a need. So if cooking is this fundamental to who we are, the obvious question is, when on earth did it actually start? And here the whole story turns genuinely mysterious because scientists still argue about the answer with real heat. The safest, most solid evidence for controlled fire comes from a place called Wonderworks Cave in South Africa, where researchers uncovered burnt bone and ash roughly 1 million years old. Over in Israel, at a site called Gesher Beno Yaakov, scientists found what appears to be deliberately cooked fish from around 780,000 years ago. But Richard Wrangham believes that cooking is far, far older than any campfire we have ever managed to dig up. He points to a human ancestor called Homo erectus, who appeared on the scene nearly 2 million years ago and who already walked the earth with smaller teeth, a smaller gut, and a noticeably bigger brain than any ancestor before them. To Wrangham, those bodies are not a mystery at all. They are the fingerprints of cooking, pressed into our very bones. The trouble is that fire leaves almost nothing behind after 1 million years. Ash blows away, charcoal crumbles, so we may genuinely never find the first hearth. The single invention that made us human may have quietly erased the evidence of its own beginning. And there is one final layer to this, and it might be the most human part of the whole story. Because cooking did not only reshape our bodies, it reshaped how we live together. A raw-eating animal eats alone, on the move, grabbing food wherever and whenever it finds it. But cooking demands something completely different. It demands a place, a fire, a pause. Someone has to gather the food. Someone has to tend the flame. Everyone has to wait. And then, finally, everyone eats together. Anthropologists believe that this cooking fire became the first true gathering place of humankind. It was the first kitchen, the first dining table, the first campfire where stories were traded back and forth in the dark. Cooking forced our ancestors to slow down, to sit still, to share, to divide up the work, and to trust one another. In a very real and literal sense, that warm circle of people sitting around a flame, quietly waiting for a meal to be ready, is the exact place where human society itself was born. So, what is the real reason humans started cooking? It was never truly about flavor. It was not a recipe or a preference or a culture. Cooking was a piece of technology, perhaps the very first one we ever completely depended on, and what it did was extraordinary. It took the hardest, most exhausting part of staying alive, digestion itself, and it handed that job over to fire. It seized all the energy that every other animal on earth burns through chewing and grinding raw food, and it gave that energy to us almost for free. And we took that energy and we spent it building the one thing that no other animal has ever possessed: a mind. You did not inherit a giant brain and then cleverly figure out how to cook. It happened the other way around. Cooking came first. The brain grew to match it. In the deepest sense imaginable, you did not invent cooking. Cooking invented you. Every other animal on this planet is still out there right now, chewing, grinding through raw leaves and raw flesh, hour after hour after hour, just to scrape together enough energy to survive another day. We are the only ones who ever stopped, gathered around a flame, and let the fire quietly do the work for us. And that one single decision, made by some nameless ancestor nearly 2 million years ago, whose face and name are lost forever, is the reason you can read and speak and dream and sit here questioning your own existence. So the next time you switch on a stove, or light a grill, or stand waiting for something to finish in the oven, remember what you are truly doing. You are repeating the single most important thing your species has ever done. The quiet little act that, long before language, long before cities, long before gods, first lit the fire underneath everything it means to be human.